The BMW 8 Series, the official car of spreadsheets and mergers. This particular model is the 840i, and it comes in at a eye-watering $101,000. So, with that said, let's start to talk about the nitty-gritty.
I fill in my pocket with legal tender, cost me to be the winner. Fly out before I can see the winner, no more TV dinners.
So you may be asking, Jack, what does $101,000 get you in a BMW? What it gets you is a corporate feeling BMW interior. This feels like a upscale model of what you'd find in a 3 or 5 Series, which means everything you touch, feel, smell, or taste is a mix of expensive feeling aluminum and leather. However, you do get the same infotainment system you'd get in, say, an X5 or 3 Series, the identical gauge cluster and heads-up display. So let's talk about iDrive. iDrive dominates this cabin's experience, and it controls everything: your drive modes, your HVAC, and your entire infotainment system. You can interact with it using physical controls like this giant rotary knob, or touch controls. And unlike many of its competitors like Lexus or Mercedes, gimmicks don't dominate the experience. Your menu structure is intelligible, and what gimmicks do exist are functional. You have gesture controls for controlling your infotainment system, so you can swap tracks and raise and lower the volume. The next thing is the built-in dash cam. On higher or better equipped BMWs, the car has a built-in dash cam system that uses its parking cameras, front and rear, to record the events before and after an incident, which is actually really impressive, and I'm surprised more cars don't offer that. And really, that's how you sum up this cabin. It's not that special, right? It doesn't have the character of the LC or the AMG. It doesn't have the flair, but what it does have is the sense that everything's here for a reason, everything works like it should, and that it accomplishes its goals that it's set out to do. It's a big GT car, meaning you have a big trunk, big front seat area, and rear seats really only big enough for children, but that's what you're expecting. So with that, let's head to the shop. Well, Mark, we're wearing our Fratagonia and we're underneath a BMW. So it's safe to say I'm home.
Yeah, you're home. That's for damn sure. How many BMWs we got to look at?
900, the whole lineup.
Jeez, I might as well just move you to Germany. So what is it? It looks like a 5 Series.
It isn't. This is the 840i, the Frugal McDougal model in the 8 Series lineup, the cheapest 8 Series you can get and the only rear-wheel drive variant. This being on the Clar architecture, it'll look very similar to the 5 or 7 Series. This particular model is built in the same factory as the 7 Series, so BMW assures you it's built with the utmost care and quality.
Oh, the premium craftsmen that work there. That is definitely one of their highest end factories. And we discussed this with the Mercedes video and some of the other German cars, and there's a big reason why you're paying a little bit more money here. Granted, this is not about value. It's the underbody coatings, the adhesives. All your exposed steel is coated. You have over-engineered pieces like the exhaust hangers that have frequency isolators on them to reduce certain vibrations and tones that might offend certain drivers. Your suspension design is all aluminum. Now, specifically when you get into the 5 Series, 7 Series, and the 8 Series, your subframe carriers, the carrier that houses all of the suspension components is aluminum, including the rear subframe, and you don't see this. Double wishbone in the front, aluminum knuckles, uprights. There's a steep caster angle built into the front suspension. And what else we got? What about the back?
So the back has a M Sport diff. This is a non-M product with a limited slip, and you get rear steer. This being the only, let's call it the poverty spec 8 Series, this is the only one without a V8. So because of that, you have more access to fun at lower speeds with that limited slip, and you can turn everything off.
And with the rear steering module, which is kind of half ZF, half Bosch, it creates a much different feel driving. It almost has this all-wheel drive feel to it, but still rear wheel
with
moving
the
around.
dynamics of a rear drive car.
Yeah.
It's the best of both worlds. The last thing to bring up is these enormous front M-grade non-carbon ceramic brakes.
They are a two-piece Brembo caliper. They are enormous when you look at them. They're bigger than some of the wheels I've had on other cars. I mean, they're just ridiculous. And, this is not a lightweight car either. But let's get under the hood and take a look at the engine.
So, Mark, this engine is the same motor you get in about every other BMW. This is the B58, which means it makes 335 horsepower and 368 foot-pounds of torque. It's good for 60 under 5 seconds. It's around 3,900 pounds, and it's totally adequate. It's not by any means the fastest car in the world, but for its buying demographic, it's perfect. You also have two other engine options in the 8 Series lineup. In the M550i, you get a V8, the same V8 found in the X5. Then if you are a real man and have a very big pocketbook, you can afford the M8 Competition, which gets the same drivetrain you get in the M5 Comp.
Wow.
Yeah.
But this has a twin power turbo. So it's got twin power.
It does have twin power, and that does not mean two turbos, it means twin scroll.
Oh, I see. So before we get in the car and take this for a drive, I'd like to know one thing.
Yes.
What's the price spread on the M8, or the 8 Series?
So, I don't know how to put this. It's catastrophically expensive. It starts at around $89,000. As tested, our 840 is $101,000. The 850 starts in the low 110, 120 range, and you can get an M8 to cost north of $170,000.
Goodbye.
That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right?
Wow, I know you're in sport mode because I can hear fake engine noise.
Yes, Mark, we're off in the 840i, and this car, I know you and I disagree on quite a bit, which is, not a big surprise to anyone, but this was definitely a vehicle for me that I initially did not like, and it took me about a week of living with it to really win me over. And one can argue at $101,000, that's not a good thing, but now that I've spent real time in it, I appreciate it for being a textbook example of how to do a totally competent and really clinically done GT car that exceeds everything it's set out to do. It looks pretty stunning in a BMW corporate way. It rides well. It is extremely quiet. The interior is not particularly special, but it is very adequate, one would say. It has a real usable trunk. It has a very excellent drivetrain that is basically faultless, and most importantly, it has the Holy Trinity. Long wheelbase, rear driven with a limited slip. And because of that, it's very balanced.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you're gonna show me here just how balanced it really is, because I'm sure Richard Corporate is really gonna give two shits about turning off the traction control and going sideways in this car.
Well, balanced is code in my book for doing this. Which, kudos to it. When you're driving this 8 or 9 tenths, it feels exceptionally balanced. It will trail brake, it'll rotate under braking. It's very predictable, and when you get into the nitty-gritty of how this actually drives, the suspension tuning and comfort, Sport and Sport Plus is none of it's punishing. Does a good job doing with body control. Steering is dead in BMW fashion, but it's very precise, and it's inoffensive. Can you fault this car on a technical level?
No, not really. To be completely fair to it, things like, so the 7 Series in this car gets what they have, the carbon core. That's their marketing term for using carbon reinforced plastics and carbon fiber to reinforce side sills, roof line. And you know what? That's great technology, and you can't feel it. If you're going to raise the cost, okay, you're increasing structural rigidity. This car, mechanically and from an engineering perspective, is really good. However, I could care less. I could care less for a few reasons, Jack. And even though you can try to drive this and impress me as much as you want, this is a $100,000 slab of worthlessness. It's not fast enough. It's and one of the most important things, it's not special enough. Aside from maybe the badge that's sitting on the outside and it looks expensive, you are getting absolutely nothing here to justify the price in terms of any emotional connection to this. It's an automatic inline six that's overpriced. It's in every other BMW. The interior space does not feel special at all. It looks like every other BMW, right down to the X3. If this was $60,000, I would get it. But
I think what this car does, so there's two elements to it, right? Do you want to form an emotional attachment with your car? Yes, I agree. Objectively though, to the kind of person you should be recommending this car to, it does what it's supposed to do. If you compare this to like the E53 we had last week, this on paper does everything better. The infotainment's better, the interior space is less gimmicky. I think it drives better, but you're right, it lacks theater. And
it lacks everything. It's just a sterile slab of BMW engineering.
The drivetrain though is the B58, which is in everything, and it's fast, but you're right, it doesn't have that.
Okay, so we can make the argument maybe changing the motor would be better. So now you put a twin turbo V8 in here, and how much does the price go up to again?
120 grand.
You just completely ruined everything right there.
No, I agree. But the funny part is this car to me, the 840, having driven the 850, is more fun.
I don't give a shit.
No,
it's $127,000 for a BMW that feels like something that's $40,000. There is no way in hell that this is worth that kind of money. No way. No way in hell is it worth that.
And that's why it's not selling. No, this is the most corporate example of a corporate product. But if you're the person who likes BMWs, I do not like this enough to justify the $101,000 price.
You'd have some screws loose to buy this car.
For 101 grand,
I'm telling you right now, if you went and leased this or bought it for, like, putting a V8 in here for over $120,000, you got too much money.
No, I agree.
There are better
You're at
cars.
911 money at that point.
Yeah.
At that, like I said when we did the Carrera T video, if you're spending more than 100 grand on a two-door, you're buying a 911. It's the best car in this segment.
I'm going to make my last point before we go to the final thoughts. And again, I have to reiterate, there's basically nothing wrong with this car. If you're looking at it, you remove the price tag. This car has a douchebag factor to it. And I kind of said this about the Mercedes. It is just exuding one thing. You are a rich, stuck-up asshole driving this car around. It looks that way, it feels that way, and it, from a automotive enthusiast aspect, this is like the epitome of why we hate modern BMWs. And it pissed somebody off so much that somebody keyed this car when you took it out. And I think that's really, if it drives me that crazy, I can imagine what other people think of it. And
particularly during this time period.
yes, and you know, BMW is BMW. It's a luxury brand. It's like many cars are. When you get to that price point, it's luxury goods for rich people, and this just stinks of that. And that's why I don't like it. It's one of the big things that I can't get over, and I will say objectively, it's a good car, but it's just not
from a personality perspective.
Right.
I agree with you, right? There is a fundamental character flaw to this car, but if you are that type A Richard corporate type who wants an executive two-door, who likes the BMW corporate attitude, likes the BMW-ness of the car, objectively, on paper, there is nothing wrong with this car, and it does everything it's supposed to do very well.
I can't wait to get out of it. That's a good time to get into the final thoughts. Final thoughts on the BMW 840i. We've had detailed discussions about this car, the underbody, the exterior, the interior. It's one of the best looking modern BMWs. It doesn't have an obscene grille. The panel gaps are good, the paint quality is great. The underbody, the engineering that went into this is amazing. The interior space, while very corporate BMW, has some of the best electronics in the business. People could learn, or other companies can learn a lot from this. There's still a great use of physical controls that are not confusing. So in almost every regard, this car is a 9 out of 10 in terms of design. The problem? Well, it just doesn't feel good to drive. They've overly refined and smoothed out every edge of this, that when you get behind the wheel, it's like a video game. It's like a simulation. When you turn the wheel, you don't feel like you're really driving the car. It feels like it's just kind of reacting to you electronically. Throttle input, the fake engine noise, the transmission, it's just, this is a two-door car that should feel a lot more special than it does. It lacks driving character. They've stripped all that away now. And I got out of a car like the BMW Z4 or the Supra. Those are more fun. They deliver a lot of what this does for half the price. Yeah, it may not have the fancy exotic carbon core and some of the other exotic materials underneath, but you can get a lot more for your money if you want something fun to drive. This is just basically a luxury car trying to be something it's not. With that said, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.